in the pursuit of truth and common sense in an unbelievable world. You're listening to the Right Mind podcast with your host, Todd Schowalter.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Right Mind. I am your host, Todd Schowalter. We are revisiting a popular subject today, one that we touched base on a few weeks ago, and that is defunding the police. Today on my show, we've got, I'm actually pretty excited to have an actual police officer on board with us. His name is Lamar Gordon. He's been a police officer for the past 4 years in Missouri. He's not allowed, or shouldn't rather, say who he's with for obvious reasons, but we're happy to have him. Lamar, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing fine so far. This is a really, it's a touchy subject, but at the same time, it's kind of a confusing subject. Can you, first of all, what is your take on what defunding the police even is?
I know people debate this a lot, but my take on defund the police is exactly what it sounds like. It's to take money from the police. And I know that a lot of the arguments are, we're reallocating, we're moving it, all those things involve taking. So for me, it's to take money from the police and then do whatever somebody's going to do with that money.
Right. And if you take money right now, now you're in Missouri. I've said on the show before, I'm in St. Louis, which has we have probably, we are the top murder capital of the country. And when people start saying, well, we're going to defund the police, to me, that just doesn't make logical sense. Why would you do that? And what would be any possible benefit from doing it?
What's funny is if you're in St. Louis, I'll give you a hint. I actually police very close to you. At least to me, there is no logical sense to defunding the police. And I think as we're seeing around the country, there's more so unexpected consequences to defunding the police than anything.
Well, and one of those would be increased crime. If we defund the police, we already have rampant crime going on as it is. And again, I'm just using St. Louis as an example. We have a big problem with the police. Now, if we get rid of the police or defund the police, and I want to touch base on what if it's actually getting rid of what this all actually means. But if we defund the police, how is that going to help this crime situation? It's not.
Well, yeah, no, not at all. And if you look at places like Portland, which is reporting an 800% increase, I believe, in violent crime. And across the board, cities in America are reporting at the very least a 40% increase in their violent crime rates. You have articles coming out like places like Buckhead is the name, right, in Atlanta, talking about succeeding. There's parts of Oregon attached to the major cities that want to succeed and make their own counties or their own cities. There's a really big conversation about what public safety looks like, and it's causing a really big fracture in the country. Like, it seems like one side wants public safety to be reimagined with lack of consequences, to say the best. And one wants consequences, and then I believe there's another side that believes we can have consequences and we can have a public health debate about when a social worker is needed, when mental health evaluation is needed. But the side that seems to be winning and the side that seems to be mostly affecting inner cities, in my opinion, is the side of lack of consequence. And I think that's really dangerous right now.
Well, yeah, lack of consequence is huge. And again, you went back to bringing in, social situations like social workers and things like that. Some of the argument is, some of these situations don't involve a police officer. We should bring in a social worker to address this, which sounds to me borderline ludicrous. If you've got a situation, even if it is minor, who knows if that's, how do you know that's not going to escalate into something more? And that's a police officer's job. What's your take on, let's get the police officers out of this whole situation and bring in a social worker? How does that work?
It doesn't. I think it's a tremendous liability. I mean, if you look at in Missouri, a lot of police departments, St. Louis most notably, started using social workers to respond to mental health calls, which is actually something I think is fine. I don't think all mental health calls or police matters, but they still have to go with an officer. They have to go with an officer because at any moment, this person whom we're deeming is so mentally unstable, we have to call the police to deal with them, can turn violent at any moment. And there are plenty, I don't know if people have ever seen it, but police activity on YouTube is a really good one. There's a bunch of other really good police body cam collection profiles on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. But I don't work for any of those, by the way. I just like that one. But you've seen it, mental health calls, people with PTSD, schizophrenics, one moment they're perfectly, compliant. The next moment, where the officer's backpedaling because they have a knife in their hand and they're charging at them. Right. So, for me, it's a dangerous situation to try to put strictly social workers, and the social workers should feel the same way, putting them by themselves going into a domestic violence call. That would be completely ridiculous to think that a social worker can walk into a domestic abuse situation where an actual assault has occurred and think that they're going to be able to do something about that situation in that moment. I think people get confused with the fact, you have to have, so let's stick with domestic violence, for example. There's a lot of social workers going into domestic violence calls now in cities like Minneapolis, Portland, a lot of other cities, right? The key would be to send an officer in, deem if there needs to be an arrest made. If there does, make that arrest. And then the social worker goes in afterwards when the scene is completely diffused, the suspect's no longer there, and the police have secured the area, and then give that victim some type of services. Whether they refuse them or not, it's up to the victim, but to give them some type of services. But to just send social workers in to deal with traffic stops is another one I've seen, to deal with shootings, domestic violence, rapes in progress. What are you going to do? I mean,
and that's not even their job.
Require an arrest.
That's not their job. That's like sending, a Boy Scout in for a bonfire, and who knows if that's going to turn into a house fire. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And what I want to know, we kind of touched base on this on my show last week. Who is instigating all this? I mean, who are the ones that are actually the proponents of this? Who are the ones that are saying, yeah, we got to do this? Because there are certain things that seem to trigger this and get the ball moving. But who are the people that are really behind this, that want to see this happen?
When you look at where this is all happening at, it's all happening in very much Democratic-led cities. This is just my observation. Looking at who the mayors are, who their parties are that they align with, this is happening in primarily democratically led cities. It is not even always the population that wants this. Mm-hmm. In some cities, the population's like, no, we need more police. Like, now we need way more police because there's way more crime. And no one's addressing it. So I would have to say Democratic mayors in a lot of places.
Right. And that seems to be the case across the board. Now, I want to ask you, if you don't mind, kind of a personal question, because it seems a lot of times we get a lot of the extreme liberals that just with their mouthpiece to the media trying to cause division in any way that they possibly can. But now you're a police officer, and you don't want to show your face for obvious reasons, but you're African American, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It seems so you're an African American police officer, and it seems that a lot of the mouthpiece, outspoken liberals are trying to, create this war where the police are against the Black community. Now, a lot of my friends and associates say, no, that's just not the case. But you have a lot of radical liberals saying, oh, yes, it is. And we've got to defund the police and get rid of them. How do you see that? I mean, do you actually see this happening? I mean, is everybody really against one another as they portray it?
It's a little complicated on both sides. My initial answer to that is no. And there's no statistical or observable data to show this, and I've heard people say, well, the police are having an act of genocide, they're at war, and they've killed hundreds of unarmed black men. And I look and I'm like, no, they've killed exactly 10, right? And and those officers who did actually went to prison. So I don't know what we're talking about. Prior to Mike Brown, this was actually still happening. It wasn't televised. Officers were doing things and they were going to prison regardless of that person's race. It just appears to be that the police are against the black community because now there's a hyper focus on race, and it smears our TVs on every channel, every opportunity we get. And you have to look at it one side. So one side is an argument who says that, and they say they're for black and brown people, but then you look at how they treat black and brown officers. So then you have to ask yourself, well, are you for the advancement of black and brown people? Because if you were, you would think that seeing a black person in a decent uniform, making a decent wage, doing a decent job would be a good moment. That's a moment to celebrate.
Sure, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, but then you demonize that person. You call them a white supremacist, a race traitor, an Uncle Tom. I've been called everything from A to Z by people who look like me and don't. And it appears that it's really an argument against police in general, and that utilizing America's racially sensitive past is the catalyst for that social war. That's what I see.
Right. And we talked about it again on a couple of earlier shows. In reality, and this just goes back to earlier guests I've had, nobody really wants all of this division. It's not as bad as the media and certain individuals, primarily totally from the left, are trying to make it. It's almost as if, hey, we don't want to fight. We don't want to hate each other. We want to get along. My guest last week, her neighbor was a police officer, and she was like, no, we're fine. Everything's cool. But the media, it seems that they're, with the liberal mouth, they're the mouthpiece for the liberal extremists that want to create this division. And I think the whole defunding the police situation, which is obviously going to cause a heck of a lot of problems, not in a good, all bad problems. Why are we doing this? Obviously it's for ratings for the media, but why do we want this division? I have a couple of ideas why, but why do you think?
Well, I think it's for some of these politicians, it's for money and it's for votes. They know if they say, well, let's defund the police, they're going to get backed by certain big money donors. I know not all of them, but some of them were backed by Soros. And that was something that was very big that some of the more left media didn't cover, but I know like Business Insider, The Hill, they covered it. But they know they're going to get this money. They know with that money comes votes, comes re-election, comes continuation of power. And for some people, as far as just the population that isn't politicians, they're not being given accurate and decent information, and they're just kind of going with the news tells them, which isn't really their fault. Most people do that. Most people don't have the ability or the time to research what they as much as they might want. But when you're a police officer and you work in these communities, I can't tell you, so where I work in downtown, which is a mess right now. I work in the northern part of the city that I work in, which is a mess right now. And I work in the housing projects, which is obvious. It's a mess right now too. But you see in these communities, primarily 99% black faces, and they tell black officers, white officers, they'll walk up, they'll shake your hand. Hey, thanks for coming. We appreciate you. We need more of you. So it's not, I'm like, so so I asked the same question, who's getting the consensus that these people don't want any more law enforcement? Every time I come to work, there's another email, increase patrol on this block, increase patrol at this address, increase patrol on this street, pull over more cars at this stop sign because they're running it and creating bad accidents. And that's coming from citizens. That's not coming from higher up saying, hey, enforce these crimes more. No, it's citizens saying, can you please pull over more cars and write those tickets because they're blowing through stop signs, they almost hit my kid, this, that, and the third. So you have to ask yourself, what's the real agenda? And I think the real agenda is palingenesis, to destroy and replace. There's a certain group of people who don't feel they have control over the current system, and they want that control. And the only way to get it is to eliminate the powers that be of the old system and put in their own system. This is why, looking back, we saw Hillary Clinton mention this too. Well, we need federal police. We need federal police. And
Okay.
I think it was Crenshaw, I forget what he is. I don't know if I think he's a congressman. I might be wrong about that.
Yes, right.
Yeah, I like him a lot. And he said,
Right.
that's weird.
War
The
veteran.
Nazis. Yeah, he said, that's weird. The Nazis did that. Didn't they? Didn't they take away state police, replace with federal police, replace all the laws, start enforcing their own powers? And
Absolutely.
next thing you know, we created laws and policies against, particular racial groups that uplifted one or the other. And he was right. He's like, you can't do this. Like, it's wrong. You might not like it, but you can't do that. And I agree. And I think that it's all about power, money, and re-election seats.
Well, and you hit on the word that my big word that I've thought all along about. You said control, and I could not agree with you more, because I think it comes down to control, and there are ways of controlling people. And when you have a divided populace, when you have people fighting against each other, one is right, one is wrong. Even if they don't feel that way, we're going to create that narrative so we can build that hate. Then that opens the door for control, because then you've got to fix something. Okay, when things are fixed, when we're all harmonious and we're all living together as we easily could be, then there's nothing to control. There's nothing to govern. There's nothing to well, I've got to take care of this. Well, I have to do this for you. You've got to take this money and do this. I mean, you take that away, and as long as we can keep this division and defunding the police, that's again the most ludicrous thing, but it's also very divisive. Then you're in the perfect situation to continue that whole element of control. And it's wrong. It's immoral, in my opinion. I mean, when like you just said, we all want to get on. You see firsthand as a police officer in the community where people, they respect you. They call you to help, do your job. You're not going to hear about that on the mainstream media. They'll run from that. But instead, that's not divisive. That's unity. And they don't like it.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is, even when you don't give people the answers they want, as long as you explain the law and why your hands are tied, because I do this a lot as an officer. I'm like, hey, man, I can't do this, and here's why. They'll always say, thanks, officer, for coming out anyways. I mean, and that's why I asked them, who wants defunding? And then where I work at in the city, people are noticing a couple other unintended consequences, which is, to defund police means you're going to ruin the responses of your fire department and your EMS units, which is something that the city has been experiencing as well. EMS will not go to certain assignments without police at least being available. And if we're all tied up, then they're not going, because they know.
And a social worker is not going to do that.
And they're not going to go. Yeah, there's no protection for them. These people are working without the tools and equipment to defend themselves appropriately. So they're not going to go. Another unexpected consequence is dispatch. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to the scene of, let's say, a shooting, and somebody's like, my son was just shot, and I had to wait on hold for 20 minutes to even get to a dispatcher. And I don't tell them this. Obviously, this isn't the thing to say, but I think in my head, well, they defunded that. There's not as many people working. I don't know what to say. There's no one working. I mean, there's only so many of us and so many evaluators. All I do is apologize to these people. Like, hey, I'm sorry. I don't know. I mean,
and it's not your fault.
Yeah, but in your head, you know what it is. It's defunding. You know what it is.
Absolutely. And then we even go back to like in Minnesota, and even here in our city of St. Louis, our new mayor, we're talking about, opening up the workhouse, defunding the police. But then meantime, she has two personal police bodyguards. Isn't that a little hypocritical that we're going to, get rid of the police on one side, but then I want two bodyguards? And the same thing is in Minnesota. I mean, we're getting rid of the police, but not for me, of course. I mean, you got to protect me. What logical person doesn't see the hypocrisy in all of this?
Yeah, I don't know. I've noticed that too. I'm like, if you don't want police, then why do you feel the need to have them with you at all? I would see no need if you don't think there's a need. But there's a need, you just don't want to say that out loud.
Well, it comes down to division and the whole control aspect. We go back again. I don't know if you're aware of everything going on in San Francisco right now. They're pretty much just saying if you're committing crimes, if you're shoplifting, if you're doing it, and ironically, Nancy Pelosi's district. So for the most part, I'm not trying to get too partisan here, but they're just saying, hey, look, if you're going to steal something, there's nothing we can do about it. It's almost like anarchy. And it seems to me, Lamar, that if we continue with this whole defunding the police charade, I mean, that's just going to spread. Pretty soon, everybody's just going to be stealing stuff. And we're going to it's going to become the Wild West. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on that is it's going to unravel our social fabric. So like a key part of the American social fabric is the ability to generate capital, and people go to work to do that. So I don't know much about San Francisco, but I know in Los Angeles, they've had 20, I think maybe more now, Walgreens closed due to the theft laws. Mm-hmm. And people think, well, I've heard arguments, well, those people have insurance, those people just don't want to replace their product. And I'm like, be that as it may, and it can be that. And I don't think that you have to be subjected to theft because you have insurance, but that's neither here nor there. How many people did that put out of work? Right. That's what you start asking yourself is, well, when we do these laws, when we allow these laws to take place, and we allow theft, we don't prosecute for carjackings. We're not going to prosecute for weapons charges. We're going to allow people to do whatever they want. What is going to be the impact? And unfortunately,
where's the end game? Where's the end game on?
Yeah, exactly. If it's anarchy, then very well, but you can't run a society based on leftist anarchy. Now, and I think the conversation gets tongue-tied with people want less laws and they want less restrictions, which is a very libertarian argument, which we can always have that debate, but it's coming off in the form of leftist anarchy, which is zero rules, zero rulers, zero accountability. And that just doesn't work for anybody. It doesn't work at all.
No, it doesn't. It's like having a bunch of infantile children running around doing whatever they want. I mean, you can't do that. That's not in a society if it's supposed to function. I'm going to ask you another semi-personal question. Why would anybody want to go into law enforcement at this point? I mean, it seems like regardless of what you do, you're going to be punished almost for it. I mean, to me, and I have the highest respect. I feel sorry for law enforcement. I mean, why would anybody want to even do this at this point when all you're getting is backlash?
It's kind of funny you asked that. I'm not always the most, I don't know that question. I don't know the answer to that question either. I have people tell me they want to go into law enforcement, and I'm kind of like, what? I mean, you see what's going on. Why? Well, what would be the point? For me, it's because I genuinely do like helping people when they're at their worst. And I feel this is a really good way to do that. And I know that that's really the reason a lot of officers, they stay and they endure, the constant ridicule. They endure, the backlash in the media, and, that's why we do what we do. A lot, I would say almost all of us like assisting people in some way. Some of us are just too old to do anything else to take my pension's almost here. I need to retire. So, but for like a lot of us younger guys, we like to help. We like to do what we can do. And not gonna lie, it's a very exciting and thrilling job. It's a very adrenaline driven job, and there's a lot of things that will keep you on your toes, keep you very excited. So I think it's a multitude of things. I don't think it's ever just one thing, but the underlying reason I think is assistance, assisting people where you can somehow, and whether that assistance comes in arresting them or arresting somebody else or getting them a social worker or getting them out of a situation, that's what makes it worth it.
Well, absolutely. And that's what it comes down to. You have a passion for it and you care about people and you actually do care about the community. And that's what you were meant to do. Unfortunately, you have this narrative out there telling you that that's bad from what the media would like you to see. And in my opinion, that's wrong because you do a stellar job. And, I have a lot of friends that are in law enforcement. To me, So, I mean, I feel sorry for a lot of you guys. And when they're saying, well, now we're going to take away your money for reasons that make absolutely no sense to me whatsoever, to me, it's just bewildering. I'm going to ask you a question that I ask all my guests towards the end of the show. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. You're in charge of everything now, Lamar. The world is yours. What are we going to do to fix this? Go ahead.
Ooh. I know everybody doesn't agree with this, but for me, I would start off with the schools. I am a very big proponent of the police reform. I think it all stems from education, teaching civics again, getting back to teaching children. I would start with the schools and get back to proper education. I would start off with finding ways to get people more energized into the job market. I would loosen some laws, of course. I think some laws are unnecessary. And I would make sure that, because I think the media should be held to the standard, I'd make sure that there is some form of accurate reporting happening in this country, where the media can't just outwardly lie or fabricate information to people. I think you start with those three things, you can fix everything else relatively easy. But it all starts for me with early education, information dissemination, and the ability for people to work for livable wages, whatever that might be in your state.
I like it. You should run for office yourself. You do a heck of a lot better job. I tell you.
Maybe. I might one day. Who knows?
I tell you what. Yeah, you speak more logically than 99% of the politicians I've heard. You've got a podcast yourself. Why don't you tell us rather a little bit about that and how we can find it and a little bit about it.
Yeah. So my podcast is It's Views from the Arch. It's a Midwest located podcast. I would say I'm located in Missouri. But I'm a political podcaster. So I like to report the news. I like to look at articles, kind of give breakdowns and analysis from multiple sides of the arguments. You guys can find me on Instagram at It's Views from the Arch. I also have a Facebook group, It's Views from the Arch.
It's Views from the Arch. Okay.
Yep. And you can find my podcast really in a bunch of places. I'm on Anchor, which disseminates to, I'm on Spotify, Applecast, Breaker, a bunch of other places. Also, I have a merchandise store if anybody's interested.
Okay, you gotta sell the merch.
Always.
Sell the goods.
The merchandise does go to communities in need and first responders that have lost their lives and their family. So it does have a cause. It's not just me pocketing a bunch of money.
No, that's awesome. Yeah.
I only try to keep enough the way I can continue to keep with the storefront cost and the cost of bringing new products. So just go to my Instagram. You guys can find that there as well.
We'll put that up on the screen too, so everybody can see it and jot it down and come visit. Yeah. I mean, just to recap, you've been great. Again, I just want to go back for a second to, and I've said it several times before, I don't think most people, the majority of people, have this divisive attitude. I don't think anybody, the majority are against the police. And I don't think the police are against anybody or have some, objective to do things wrong, to do bad things. I think we're in a situation now with, again, where we're trying to divide and conquer, and then the media is a big blowhorn for that. Do you have any last thoughts before we wrap on that? I mean, do you think in the real world we're actually a lot more united than people would like to believe?
Yeah, I do. My last words, and I say this to everybody, is, if you think you're against the police, if you think you don't like the police, for whatever that is, or whether you're a young college student or an older person who's been persuaded of something, I always challenge people, why don't you just walk up to an officer and just have a conversation? I have conversations with people every day, and we talk. I mean, people walk up to me, ask me hard stuff, politically hard stuff, socially hard stuff. And if I'm not busy, I'll take that time, in the quick trip to talk to them. So I challenge people, just try talking to your local law enforcement, individual, maybe sign up for a ride along, go see what it is. Let them strap the vest on you, take you into the houses, take you lights and sirens to whatever they're going to. Really see, smell, hear the chaos, the pain, the hardship that people go through, and they call the police, and really try to get a sense of what you're asking certain people to sacrifice with your political beliefs, such as defund police, where they don't come anymore, and have conversations with police about the job. Try to see them for being human as well, because I think we forget that there is a human being wearing that uniform, not just a tool of the government. So that's my challenge to everybody.
No, that couldn't be. That was very well said. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I think we're all on the same side. I think you're out to serve and protect, and most rational human beings in society are out to help you do your job and respect you 200%. Unfortunately, the powers that be with the television cameras don't want you to think that. I want to thank you very much for being on the show. Again, we will promote your site on screen, but again, it's called Views from the Arch. Any last words before we call it a show?
No, that'd be all for me.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank you very much again. This is Todd Schowalter. You've been watching and listening to Right Mind. And remember, if you don't have a right mind, you don't have a mind at all. Till next time, bye-bye.
This has been the Right Mind Podcast with Todd Schowalter.